There were evenings when Theon of Archeon sat alone on the broken steps of the amphitheatre, letting the last of the daylight fade behind the ancient pillars. He didn't pretend to be invincible. He didn't pretend to walk through life with an unshakable flame inside him. He understood, more honestly than most, that there are seasons of human life when the mind feels heavy, the body tired, and the spirit unmotivated. And instead of fighting that truth, he learned to listen to it. When people asked him how he found motivation, he always gave a quiet, almost uncomfortable smile, because the question itself was built on a misunderstanding. Theon believed motivation was never something to be found. It was something to be created, slowly, gently, quietly, through action, not emotion. He said once, in his simple and unadorned way, "Do not ask the fire to appear. Carry the wood, carry the spark, carry the willingness to try. The flame arrives only after the work begins." And this was the first truth Theon lived by. Your feelings do not need to agree with your actions. You can feel tired and still take one step. You can feel discouraged and still show up. You can feel unmotivated and still do something meaningful. He believed people suffer not because they lack strength, but because they expect strength to feel a certain way. They wait for clarity, for energy, for passion, as if those things were gifts the world owed them. But Theon knew better. He knew the world owes nothing and gives nothing easily. In his early life, when he was just a fisherman's son wandering through the quiet streets of Acheon, he believed that humans moved forward because of passion. But after years of witnessing loss, storms, failure, he learned that passion fades quickly, and what carries a person through the dark is not passion, but commitment. He spoke about this often, though rarely with grand philosophical language. His words were simple, grounded, shaped by real life. You must not wait for the mind to feel ready. Readiness is a shadow. It appears only when you begin moving. Many people misunderstood him, thinking this meant forcing oneself into constant action. But Theon was not a preacher of pain for its own sake. He didn't believe in relentless pressure or in drowning yourself in endless work. Instead, his message was softer. Even in your weakest moment, there is something small you can still do. And that small thing, that tiny beginning, is enough. Because beginnings create momentum, and momentum feeds motivation, not the other way around. When Theon felt lost or overwhelmed, he returned to a simple ritual. He walked through the stone corridors of the old temple, where the torches burned low and shadows stretched across the walls. He would choose one task, one direction, one step. And he would say to himself, quietly, "Begin here, begin now, begin with what is possible." He believed deeply in breaking life into small pieces. He once wrote on a fragment of driftwood, "A man is not tired because the path is long. He is tired because he tries to see all of it at once." For Theon, this meant accepting that you don't need a plan for the entire year or even the entire week. You need only the next honest step. That was enough to move him out of paralysis, out of stagnation, out of the fog that motivation could never clear. Sometimes he would sit on the balcony overlooking the silent city and observe the way people walked, the way they carried their burdens. And he noticed something important. Those who waited for motivation often remained still. Those who acted despite doubt eventually found clarity. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like the slow brightening of dawn. He understood that the mind loves to create illusions. One of the greatest illusions is the belief that you must feel a certain way to act a certain way, that you must be inspired to begin, confident to speak, unafraid to move. But Theon believed that humans are built for movement even when afraid, even when uncertain, even when exhausted. He believed that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the willingness to confront struggle without collapsing inward. There was a moment in his life, during a particularly difficult season, when he felt so unmotivated that even picking up a quill felt like lifting a boulder. He did not hide this from the people who sought his guidance. He told them openly, "There are days I feel empty." And they were surprised, because they expected philosophers to be overflowing with wisdom at all times. But Theon believed wisdom wasn't a constant. Wisdom was a practice, something built, not possessed. In those empty days, he practiced a habit he learned as a child, returning to the simplest possible action. He would fill a cup with water. He would sweep a small part of the floor. He would light a single lamp. Completely ordinary actions, but they grounded him. They told his mind, "I can move, even a little." And a little movement was always enough to dissolve the fog. Theon didn't believe in punishing himself for feeling unmotivated. He believed in understanding it. He believed that exhaustion was a message, not a flaw. That the body and mind speak in subtle ways, warning you when you've carried too much for too long. He believed that if you listen, you can learn to adjust your path instead of breaking against it. He said, "The man who pushes himself without listening becomes a prisoner of his own ambition." But then he added, "The man who listens without action becomes a prisoner of his own fear." For him, balance meant acting gently, not forcing, not collapsing, just moving with intention. At night, when the wind moved through the abandoned amphitheater, he would reflect on his own failures. He never spoke of them loudly, but they shaped him. He believed that failure was not a sign to stop, but a sign to realign. He believed a person must learn to begin again and again and again, without shame. In this, he was different from many philosophers who believed in rigid discipline. Theon believed in compassionate discipline, the discipline of returning, not the discipline of punishment. People often came to him asking, "How do I stop feeling lazy?" And Theon would shake his head. "Laziness is not your nature," he would say. "It is your mind retreating from confusion. Solve the confusion and the energy returns." To him, confusion meant one of three things: too many options, too much pressure, or too much noise from the outside world. And he helped people simplify their lives by removing what did not matter. He said, "A man carrying too many opinions is like a boat carrying too many stones. He sinks before he reaches the shore." So he encouraged people to let go of what was unnecessary, to release the expectations that did not belong to them. He believed life becomes lighter when you stop trying to impress people who will forget your name. He believed that energy returns when you stop living according to standards no one is holding you to. He believed motivation appears naturally when your actions align with who you truly are. There was a passage he wrote in one of his scrolls that later generations quoted often. "If you cannot begin, begin smaller. If you cannot move forward, move inward. If you cannot change the day, change the moment. This philosophy shaped everything he did. Theon didn't care about great achievements or dramatic transformations. He cared about momentum, the gentle, humble momentum of a person who refuses to surrender to stagnation. He believed that progress is not measured in speed, but in sincerity. And when his students felt overwhelmed, he reminded them, "You are not failing. You are simply learning how to carry yourself." He believed every person needed time to grow into their own strength. He never judged anyone for moving slowly, but he gently warned those who stopped entirely for long periods. Stillness is peaceful, but prolonged stillness becomes decay. When Theon felt deeply unmotivated, he turned inward. He asked himself a question that became central to his life. What kind of man do I want to become by the end of this day? Not by the end of the year or the end of his life, just by the end of today. He believed identity is shaped daily through the smallest of decisions. Some evenings he answered, "A patient man," other days, "A steady man," and occasionally, "A man who tried, even in his weakness." These simple identities shaped his behavior. They gave him direction even when motivation was absent. He believed identity was more powerful than emotion, and he believed humans could choose their identity each day. There was a story he once shared about a fisherman who repaired his nets every morning, even when his hands were numb, even when he felt like giving up. The fisherman told him, "If I wait for the perfect morning, I will starve." And this sentence lived in Theon's mind for years. He realized that motivation is a luxury, action is a necessity, and that if you learn to move without waiting for your emotions, you will live more fully than those who wait for inspiration to strike. But Theon also believed in rest, deep rest, honest rest. He believed people destroy themselves by pretending they are machines. He believed that rest was part of action, the part that renews the spirit so movement is possible again tomorrow. He taught that rest without guilt is a strength, not a weakness, and that a person who rests intentionally rises stronger than the person who burns themselves out. He believed the human soul needed silence, slowness, and darkness to grow, just as seeds need soil and night before they sprout. Sometimes he would walk through the quiet marketplace at night, listening to the distant sounds of life, and he would reflect on the way people punish themselves for not being constantly productive. He believed humans confuse value with busyness. He believed a quiet life could still be meaningful, that a slow life could still be noble, that a gentle life could still be brave. His own life was proof. Theon did not chase greatness. He did not speak loudly. He did not seek recognition. And yet his presence shaped the people around him because he lived with intention, not noise. He believed intention was enough. When someone asked him, "How do I regain motivation?" he answered, "You must stop trying to feel motivated. You must start living aligned." And by aligned, he meant living in accordance with your ideals, your truth, your deeper purpose. He believed motivation comes naturally when your actions reflect your values. But when your actions contradict your values, motivation dies. He believed this was the true reason people felt stuck, not because they were weak, but because they were disconnected from themselves. Late at night, when the torches burned low, he would whisper to himself, "I will act today in a way that honors who I wish to become." And that simple promise carried him through countless days when emotion alone could not. He also understood the role of expectation. He believed the modern mind, even in his ancient world, was burdened by too many expectations: to be strong, to be productive, to be confident, to be successful. And he believed these expectations suffocated people. He said, "The weight you carry is not yours. Put down what does not belong to you." He taught his students to drop expectations that did not serve them, to stop trying to live up to images created by others, to stop comparing themselves to those whose paths were different. He believed envy was the death of motivation, because envy makes a person chase a life that is not theirs. He believed the cure was authenticity, living a life shaped by your own truth, not someone else's dream. When people asked how to find that truth, he said, "Listen to the parts of yourself you silence. They are trying to guide you." Motivation returned to Theon whenever he returned to himself. He practiced gratitude not in the shallow way people often do, but as a grounding force. He would look at the simplest things: the warmth of the lamp, the texture of the stone beneath him, the quiet breath of night. And it reminded him that life was not something to conquer, but something to participate in. He believed the human mind grows heavy when disconnected from the present, and that by returning to now, even for a moment, the burden lifts. He said, "A man carrying the past and the future at once will always fall. Put one down." He believed most of motivation is lost in the mental noise of worrying about what will happen, what could happen, or what failed to happen. And that clarity appears only when a person sits fully in the present moment. As the night deepened, Theon would sit beneath the quiet glow of the torchlight and let the world soften. In this softness, he found his path again, not through force, but through acceptance, not through passion, but through truth. He believed acceptance was the beginning of discipline, and discipline, once gentle and honest, became the root of motivation. He believed a person must stop hating themselves for slowing down, stop judging themselves for feeling tired, stop expecting themselves to be perfect. He said, "You are a human being, not a flame. You cannot burn endlessly." And once he accepted this, he found that motivation returned not with intensity, but with peace. When his students struggled, he reminded them, "There is no need to rush. You will find your strength again. Just keep moving, even if slowly." He believed slow movement was still movement, and he believed forward was forward, no matter the speed. In his final years, when his beard had grown slightly grey and the lines on his face traced the quiet battles he had fought, someone asked him, "What is your greatest lesson about motivation?" Theon closed his eyes, took a quiet breath, and said, "That I never needed it as much as I thought. I needed honesty, clarity, patience, and consistency. Motivation was only a visitor, but discipline became home." And maybe that is the message you needed tonight. You do not need to feel inspired. You do not need to feel driven. You do not need to feel powerful. You just need to take the next small, honest step without demanding anything from yourself that you do not have right now. You are not weak. You are not failing. You are not behind. You are simply standing at the beginning of your next chapter. Theon would sit beside you tonight and remind you of something simple. The weight you carry can be lifted. The confusion you feel can be cleared. The path you lost can be found again. Begin with what is possible. End where the day ends, and tomorrow begin again. Let these words settle gently. You don't need motivation to move. You just need willingness. And that willingness, however small, is already inside you. Already inside you. Already inside.